Hey guys, welcome back. In the previous class, we have discussed about algorithm and what are the representations of algorithm. Then how an algorithm should be. That is, what are all the characteristics of algorithm, right? And here in this video, we are going to start the language C programming. Okay, so here our C language begins. So how here we will see why we are going for this C programming and what is the C programming, what are the features of C programming, and how a C programming should be written. Okay, so we'll see all the fundamentals of C programming in this class. Coming to why C programming. So we have number of programming languages: C, C++, Java, Python, Fortran. Like we have number of languages, programming languages. But still, why we are going for this C programming and what is the importance of C programming? What a special feature a C programming has is, so whenever we want to work at a lower level. Okay, so at that time we can go for the C programming because C programming can able to work at lower level. That is, it is easy to convert the C programming into machine language, which can execute at a high speed. So that is what the main advantage of C programming here, for executing programs at higher speed and to work with the with the program at lower level. So we can go for this C programming. And the another advantage we have here is, so this C programming can able to access the computer hardwares directly. Okay, so there are hardwares like we have IO devices, right? So we have IO devices, and now we have storage devices like hard disk, drives. Like we have storage devices. In that way, we have number of hardwares here. So whenever we need to access the computer hardware directly, then at that time we can go for this C programming. And there are some applications which have been implemented using the C language, that is, which have been written, and still those languages, that is, those applications are still in use with the help of C programming is Windows OS, right? So we have OS, that is Windows OS, then Linux, then we have Google Chrome OS, Apple iOS. So all these OS are written with the help of C programming. Why? Because when we say OS, okay, so the purpose of OS uh, is to act as an interface between the user and the computer. That is, when a user wants to access any hardware, computer hardwares. Okay, so when a user wants to communicate with the computer hardwares, then how we can do it? Through the OS, that is with the help of OS. Here your OS will directly communicate or will directly access the computer hardwares. So as C language is used for that purpose, okay, which can able to access the computer hardwares directly, we are writing all these OS with the help of C language. This is why we are going for C languages, though there are a number of languages available, right? And coming to what is a C programming language. So C language is also called as a procedural programming language, or we can say it is a structured language. Means when we are writing a program, we should follow some procedures or we should follow some structure. This is how a C program should be, and this is the structure a C code should follow whenever we are writing a code. Okay, so there is some procedure to be followed for writing a C program, and that is why it is called as a procedural programming language, or it is a structured language. And this was developed by Dennis Ritchie in the year 1972. And coming to the features of C programming, here it has low level memory access. As I mentioned earlier, so this can access the computer hardware directly, right? So this is the main feature, we can say. It has low level, also it has low level memory access, which means it can execute programs at high speed. Then it has simple set of keywords. So there are keywords available in C program, and we can make use of those keywords for writing programs. And the next one is clean style. Means here we can choose the meaningful name for variables, and for functions we can choose a meaningful name. So that is what a clean style here. This is what the fundamentals about C, and now we'll see the structure of C program. So how a C program should be. And this is the structure of C program. As you can see here, it starts with the header files, then followed by main function, followed by variable declaration, then body of that main function, and finally return statement. So this is the structure of C program, and this is how a program should be written. Here the sequence should not be changed, right? So starting with the header file. What is this header file? Usually when we are writing a program, okay, our program consists of some of the functions, and that functions is for performing some particular task. So all those functions are written already in the C compiler, so that will be in the header file. So we have to start the C program by using this header file, and the example for this header file is stdio.h, stdlib.h, string.h. So these are all some of the header files. As you can see, the extension of these files, so it is with .h. So here h represents the header file. So .h extension is used for the header file, that is studio.h, standard library.h, and string.h. And coming to main function, so every C program contains a main function. Whenever your program is executed, so the execution always starts with the main function. You cannot write a C program without main function, right? So a C program contains a main function, and always the execution of your program starts from the main function only. Okay, so it enters into the main function and it executes all the code that is present inside this main function, and then it will get terminated. So the example for defining this main function is, here is one example. Like this we can give the main function, that is void main, and always whenever you're writing a function, that function should be written in this way, that is with the brackets. So it should be written with the open and close brackets, followed by curly braces, that is open curly brace and close curly brace. So inside this curly brace we can have number of statements, okay, that is to be executed, and this is called as the body of the function. Inside this close braces we will call it as the body of the function main. And followed by this main function we have variable declaration. So we already discussed about declaring variables. Why we are going for variable declaration? Because we need to insist the compiler, that is we need to tell the compiler that you are going to use some variable for your program, and in that you have to specify what type of variable it is. Okay, whether in that variable you will be having any number, or you are going to store any name, or you are going to store any alphabets. Like we should tell the compiler that we are going to use some variable, and the variable should contain this type of data, like it should hold the values, that is integer values, or it should hold character type of data. Likewise we have to declare the variable. Okay, so that is what the variable declaration here. And example you can see here, inside the main function we have this variable declaration. So this statement is called as the variable declaration, and we will see what is variable and how to declare a variable in detail in the upcoming classes. So this is the example for variable declaration, and here this int is nothing but the type of variable which you are going to use. Okay, so here int represents integer type of variable, that is we can store numbers like 1, 2, 3, 10, 5, like we can store numbers here. Okay, that is what integer type of variable. And here this num1 is your actual variable. So here num1 is a variable, and this is the name you are giving for your variable. You can give any name for your variable, it is up to us. So a programmer can use any name for a variable, and here we are using num1 as the variable name. This is the name given for variable. Then next is the body. So here body means, as I mentioned, inside this main function we will be writing some statements. So when you run a program, when you execute a program, so the statements inside this main function will get executed line by line. Okay, in order, it will execute only line by line, that is in order only, in sequence only. So that is represented as body. And you can see the example here. So inside main function, that is within this curly braces, open and curly braces, we have set of statements. And this statement, you know, this is the declaration statement. And here we have one more statement, and this statement is actually used to display output to the user, that is in the output screen. For that we are using this printf. Okay, so here this printf statement is used to display the output. And here what you are going to display, you are going to display num1, that is the value present inside this variable num1. This is the body, that is the thing, that the statements that is present inside this braces. Okay, so these are all called as the body of this main function. Then finally we have return statement. So when we are going for this return statement is when a user want to return something with the help of function, then we can go for this return function. And when we can return something is when we are using the integer type, or when we are using character, that is based on the return type. Here this is called as the return type. Okay, so this is called as the return type of a function. Main is a function and this is called as the return type of a function. Here based on this return type, okay, so this function will return. If we are using integer, then this function will return an integer as output. Okay, so this is what the return statement here. This is how we can give return statement. So inside a function, based on the return type we are using for this function, this will return. So this statement should be used, return. When you are giving return 0, so it will terminate. Right? And whenever we are using this kind of return type, then it will return something. If there is one more way, that is we can use void here for this return type. When you are using void, then it won't return anything. Okay, so there will not be any return statement. When you are using void main, it won't have any return statement. Instead of void, if you are using these kind of types, okay, return types, then we can go for this return statement. So we'll discuss all these in detail in next classes, upcoming classes. Okay, so now this is the structure of the C program. So this is how a C program should be written. So starting with header file, always it should start with header file. Then always your C program should have a main function. Without main function, we cannot write a C program, because the execution of your C program always starts with this main function. Then inside that, variable declaration. So before going for any processing, before going for performing any operation, first we should declare the variable. Okay, that is we should tell the computer that you are going to use some variable. For that we have variable declaration. Then later we can have some statements, that is body of the main function, and finally return statement. And this return statement is based on the return type of the function you are using. Okay, so along with this we can also have some other statements, like we can add comments. Okay, so we can add comments to your C program. Then we can have some global declarations. So we'll discuss all those type of declarations in detail in variables. Like here we have given variable declaration, like, right? So that is happening inside this main function. This, you can see the variable declaration is happening inside this main function. So likewise, we can have some variable declaration outside the main function, and that is termed as global declaration. So we'll see that detail. We'll see that in detail. So no need to worry about that. And now coming to the example of C program, you can see the example for C program. So as mentioned, the starting one is header file. So it should have header file, and this is how you should write a header file. So here I have given some examples for header files, right? Right, like studio.h, standard library.h, string.h. So here, if you look at this statement, it has stdio.h, that is standard input output.h. So here we are using the extension .h in order to represent that it is a header file. Since it is a header file, we are using this .h extension. And whenever we are including header file in a program, it should be like this, that is hash include, within this bracket we have to write stdio.h, and this is standard input output. So when we need to do any input output operation, then we have to use this header file stdio input output.h. Okay, so when we want to get input, any input from user, and if you want to display anything as an output for the user, So at that time we need this stdio.h, because this header file contains some functions, predefined functions which are already defined, and we can directly use that function for performing some operation. And here we are performing operation like we are getting input from the user and we are going to display something as output to the user. So for all these purposes we need some statements, right? And all these statements are already inbuilt in this header file. That is why we are using this header file here. Then after this header file we have main function. So as I mentioned, always your execution starts with the main function. So void main. Here the return type, what is the return type I'm using? I'm using void main. So whenever I'm using void, we don't need to give any return statement inside the code, right? Instead of void, if I'm using int main, then I have to give a return statement. But here I'm using void main, so no need to give any return statement here. So after this main function, here is your main function, that is starting, right? So that is with open curly brace. So here the function is started. Inside this function, what we should have, initially we should have variable declaration. That is, we should tell the compiler what are the variables we are going to use. And again I'm saying this example is for sum of two numbers. Okay, I'm taking the same example here also. For finding sum of two numbers, that is for adding two numbers, I'm writing a simple C program for adding two numbers. Okay, so inside this main function I need to declare variables. So what are all the variables I'm taking? Num1, num2 and sum. So for this num1 and num2, I'm going to add this num1 and num2, these two variables. Okay, so after adding this variable I need to store the result in somewhere, right? So for that we are going for this sum variable. So after performing addition, I'm going to store the result in this variable sum. For that I have to tell the compiler I'm going to use three variables here. The first variable is num1, second variable is num2 and the third variable is sum. Okay, so this is the declaration statement, and here this int represents the type of variable we are going to use. So here we are going to do sum of two numbers, that is we are going to add two numbers, right? So we are going to add number. That is why here I have given int. Int means integer variable. Okay, so integer means it consists of values, numbers without any decimal point. Okay, like number can be 5, 10, as I mentioned, 1, 2, 3, whatever. Okay, so these are the integer numbers without any decimal point. So here we are going to add two integer number and the result will also be an integer. So that integer number should be saved in this integer variable sum, right? This is declaration statement. After declaration, here we are assigning the value to these two variables. So for number 1, I'm giving value 10. You can give any number. Okay, so for this variable I'm giving number 10 and for this variable I'm giving number 20. So now number 1 is having 10, number 2 is having 20, and just see these two are integer numbers because here we are using integer, so here it should contain only integer values. Now number 1 contains value 10, number 2 contains value 20. So after giving values, after assigning values to these two variables, now what we need to do? We need to perform addition on these two variables. So here num1 plus num2. After performing addition, we'll get some result, and that result will be stored inside this variable sum because we are assigning these num1 plus num2 to sum, right? So the result will be assigned to sum. Now we have performed the operation and the result is stored in sum. But when we want to display the output to user through display screen, through output screen, what we have to do? We have to display that result, right? In algorithm we used display sum. In flowchart also we used display sum. In pseudocode we used print sum, like, right? So likewise in C program, whenever you want to display something as an output to the user, then you should use this printf. Okay, this printf statement should be used for displaying output. And inside this printf, here this is used for printing the integer value. Okay, so we'll discuss all these later. Now just see, here we are using this percentage %d, which is used to display the integer value as output. Okay, so the statement we are using here is printf statement, and inside this we are going to print the integer value. And which value we are going to print? Actually we are going to print the value of sum, that is the result, right? The result will be stored inside the sum. So we are going to print the value of this sum, and for that we are using this percentage %d. So this printf statement is used to display the output. Okay, so as I mentioned, here we are using the header file standard input output. For displaying the output, we need this printf statement, and this printf statement is already defined inside this header file. So whenever we are using this printf statement, we should include this header file in our program so that we can use this statement in our program, right? This is a simple C code for performing sum of two numbers and displaying the result to user. For example, if you don't have anything to perform, just you want to display something in the output screen. So for that, how we can write the program? So always it should start with header file. So hash include. Since we need to display something as an output, here we have to include the header file stdio.h, because it contains the standard input output statements, right? And after header file, we should always use main function. So void main. Inside main function, here I am not going to perform any operation. I am not going to do any task. Just I am going to print some statement as output. So whenever we need to print something as output, what we have to do? We have to use the statement printf. So inside this printf, whatever you want to print, just give it inside the double quote. So here inside the double quote, I'm just printing welcome. Okay, so this welcome should be written inside this double quote. Then close this printf along with this semicolon. Okay, so after this, close this main function. Don't forget to open main function and don't forget to close main function. And when I'm writing something inside this printf, we should use this. Always we should use this double quotes. So whatever you have written inside this double quote, that will be printed as output. Now if you execute this code, what is the output you will get? The output you will get is welcome. So this will be displayed as output because it is given inside the printf statement. And one more thing you should note here is this semicolon. Okay, so in this program also, at the end of the line, each and every line I have used semicolon. Okay, so this semicolon is used to indicate the end of the statement, right? So here I am completing my declaration, right? So this statement is for declaration, and here I am completing my declaration. So I just have used this semicolon, and here I am defining the value for this num1. So I just did my definition here. So I have to give semicolon. Here also I am just initializing the value for this num2. So here also I should give semicolon because here the assignment is over. And coming to this statement, we are performing addition operation. So in this statement, our addition operation is over. So we have to specify semicolon at the end of the statement. Okay, so this indicates that it indicates the end of the statement. And if you look at here, for this header file, we will not use semicolon. And whenever you are writing any function, there also we should not use any semicolon, because semicolon is used to indicate the end of the statement. When you are writing this function, you are not ending your function here itself. because your function starts here only. That is why we are using this open curly braces. And where is your main function gets terminated, that is where it is getting end. Here it is getting end with the close braces. Okay, we are using this curly brace, close curly brace here to indicate that your function is ending here. So your function starts here and it ends here, so that we are not using any semicolon at the end of this main function, because your function actually starts here and it ends here. So for that function end, we are using this curly braces, so no need to indicate any semicolon here. But in each and every statement inside that main function, you have to use semicolon to indicate the end of the statement. If you don't use this semicolon properly, or if you are using semicolon unwantedly, then you will be notified with an error. Okay, so you'll get an error if you're not using semicolons properly, then you'll get an error. So this is all about the structure of a C program.